let's move on now to a conversation about Mr. Kyle Dubas,
Poor Kyle.
the general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who this summer, man, it was brutal. I think a lot of people turned on Kyle Dubas. It's funny because you go back to the start of last season, everyone was praising him for bringing in Wayne Simmons and, a veteran like Joe Thornton and Spezza and, kind of reshaping the decor, signing TJ Brody, who had an awesome season. But then the Leafs bow out in the first round again. Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews score 1 goal in 7 games against the Habs. And all of a sudden, the narrative spins back the other way. The Leafs are too soft. The core is overpaid. They don't care. Fire Kyle Dubas. This is trash. This and that. So the question I pose to you, Michael Lepore, is Kyle Dubas's job on the line this season? If the Leafs lose in the first round again, should Kyle Dubas be fired?
I'm already shaking my head, man, and like disappointment of like that vision again. It's kind of a cop out, but I don't know. Like it all depends. Like I always make the point, like hey, they get Tampa in the first round, they lose in 7. Like should the GM be fired if they have a great season and Tampa goes on to win another Stanley Cup? On the outside, like all the GM can do at the end of the day is construct a team as best as he can. And I think what sometimes people forget is that you're not playing a video game. You can't just insert X into a lineup to make something better. Or like you hear people say, and this is the one I always point out, is you hear people say, okay, and I'll listen to the argument. I'll definitely listen to the argument that you look at the big 4 contracts with the Maple Leafs, and people would say, man, one of them should be given to a defenseman. Like take out X player and insert Dougie Hamilton or Pietrangelo or whoever would have become available. And that would make things way different. And I'll listen to that argument. But what I respond to that is you can't just do that. you can't just put it out there that John Tavares is available for a number 1 defenseman and snap your finger, a team makes that trade. And I'm just talking like generally, like any situation for any team. And my point with all this is that you look at the overall job he's done. I know people are going to throw shit at this, but like he's done an A+ job with what's available to him and like the guys he has going through that system. And you're a complete liar if you can point to another management group like in our lifetime that's built something as strong as this current Maple Leafs organization. Like Kyle from top
management group, you mean?
Yeah, Leafs management group. Oh yeah, Leafs management group. So the way I would look at it, it's like you look at the lineup, and again, I challenge anyone to do this. Go on Cap Friendly, go through every team, and take notes on how many contracts that team has that if there was a compliance buyout would get bought out, or a contract that team could not trade. And what are the ones on the Maple Leafs? Like if the issue people saying, oh, they give forwards too much money in the way of the big 4. It's like, all those guys deserve that money. Like based on market, all those guys deserve big money. Now, again, I'll listen to an argument that's not smart to give 4 forwards that money, but like those were the players that Kyle had at the time. And the way I always look at a deal in general, like anytime a GM signs a deal signs a player to a deal, I ask myself, could that GM trade it? Could he trade that deal? And if I quickly say no, that's kind of how I judge it as a bad deal. There is no contract on the Toronto Maple Leafs that wouldn't be moved, like if the Leafs put out the call. And like I circle that, and maybe it's like a weird thing, like an insecurity thing as a Maple Leafs fan. I have confidence in him. Like let's face it, there's a lot of bad GMs in the National Hockey League. Like we're just reminded of it, like in free agency, you see some of the cash that's thrown around and some of the term that's thrown around, and like they're bad deals. Like you're gonna, and even if it's not right away, the term some of these guys get, like you're gonna be paying like almost double what that player is worth by the end of his contract. And then you look at the Leafs, and it's like we don't have any of those. And what's calming to me is that as far as Kyle Dubas is concerned, and again, insecurity as a Leaf fan, I'm almost certain he's not going to do anything stupid. Like I see these trades or I see these free agency signings or these contracts, and I'm like, that's bad, like obviously bad. And with Kyle, I haven't seen any of those. Like, I mean, some of them have debate and whatever, because that's hockey and how things have worked out. And it's easy to look now as, okay, this team bowed out, so this was a bad move or that was a bad move. But smart guy, man. Like he runs a tight ship. He's a numbers guy. He's smart enough to hire the right people around him. I've heard him say that once, that like he credits so much to the people around him because there's a lot of things he's not good at. And he's quick to hire people who are strong at the things that he's not good at. And that to me, that's the sign of a leader, like knowing his strengths and knowing his weaknesses. So is his job on the line, Bruno, to sum this all up? I think the easy answer is yes, but I'd be rattled, man. Like I really would be rattled if he was let go. And I'll say it, man. Like Kyle Dubas is fired. A new GM comes in. You think this guy's just gonna come in and like trade two of the big four? No, he's gonna evaluate it and look at it, or at least I hope he does. Right? It's just there's so many fine margins, and people will point to playoff success. There are so many fine margins between winning and losing in the National Hockey League in the playoffs. And whatever people want to say, like the Leafs, like they've been on the wrong side of fine margins, like over the last few years, like game 7 losses, the game 5 loss to Columbus. And that's stuff the GM can't really control. He can put his team in the best situation, both short-term and long-term. And I'll call someone out who makes the argument that Kyle Dubas hasn't done that.
No, I'm right there with you when it comes to Kyle Dubas, Lepore, because I just look at the totality of the decisions that he has made since he's been GM of the Leafs. And like you alluded to, you really can't point to any egregious mistakes. Now, say what you want that he overpaid Marner a little bit and he overpaid John Tavares in free agency, but earth to everyone, every single player, every elite player that's ever been signed in free agency has been overpaid. And you can point to that and say that that has maybe screwed up the cap to a certain degree. But another thing that really screwed over the Leafs, and they're not the only team that suffered from this, is the flat cap situation.
Exactly.
And I don't want to, completely, take Kyle Dubas off the hook for some of the collapses that the Leafs have had. But this flat cap situation has been brutal for the Leafs because this is a team that prides itself on making decisions, obviously based on pure hockey, but of course on numbers and analytics. And you don't think that they had this perfectly planned out when they signed all these guys to these big contracts?
I love that. I love that when I love when people like make that comment. Like, you don't think they were thinking about 2 years from now? Like, no, it's their job, guys. Like, oh, by the way, we just didn't think about what we were going to do 2 years from now. Man, sorry, Bruno, keep going.
Yeah, no, you're crazy if you don't think that it was perfectly planned out in terms of signing those guys and understanding that the salary cap was going to go up by whatever it was every year, 2.5% one year, and then 3% the next year. And they had all of that figured out. And obviously, every team is in this same boat. Every team has to adjust to this. You just saw the Tampa Bay Lightning have to let their entire third line go. Blake Coleman signs in Calgary. Barclay Goodrow signs with the New York Rangers, a complete overpay. You could even say the same thing about Coleman in Calgary. Yanni Gourde now with the Seattle Kraken. Like, there's cap casualties all around the NHL. And it's been brutal for a lot of these teams that have been really up against the salary cap and then dealing with this whole COVID situation and then having to really scramble and figure out ways to make it work financially. And it's been really tough for a lot of teams, and the Leafs and Tampa Bay are two that stick out, obviously. But when I look at all the decisions that Kyle Dubas has made, for the most part, he has made good, sound decisions. And at some point, this core needs to do something for him.
Exactly.
This core needs to come through when it matters most.
Yeah, Bruno and I are blaming the players. Like that's what Bruno and I are doing, right? I mean, the team's there, it's the players. So,
and that's really what it is. Like, Kyle Dubas probably goes to sleep at night thinking like, what else can I do?
Seriously, imagine. Oh my
Like
God.
if man, oh man, imagine being Kyle Dubas. It's like, what the hell else does this guy have to do? Because, Lepore, you brought up a good point. Like, could he swap out one of these forwards for, a number one defenseman? Sure, I guess he can. But like you said, first of all, it's not that easy. And second of all, are we even sure that would, put this team over the edge?
Exactly. And even what was that one in the summer? It was going around, and I think it was just an article that was written. Like, there's no real buzz. It was a Marner for Rasmus Dahlin. It's like, do people think that would just like make the Leafs like the President's Trophy winner and like Stanley Cup contender? Like, no, guys, we lost Marner. Like you're forgetting about something very important. And what's Dahlin, right? But anyways,
yeah, Mitch Marner, who's been the Leafs' leading scorer since the second he stepped in the NHL, and who has been one of the leading scorers really in the NHL since he stepped into the NHL. So yeah, even another thing I heard in the offseason was like, trade Marner or trade one of these other big four guys and just sign Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that's going to solve all our problems. And listen, I'm the biggest Dougie Hamilton fan that you're going to find, but are we sure that swapping out one of your elite forwards, one of the elite players in the league, and bringing in a number one defenseman, are we sure that's going to make a huge difference here? Are we sure that's going to mean that the Leafs win a playoff series? No, we don't know. So, and I look even, and I bring up the Edmonton Oilers a lot and I bang on them a lot. Connor McDavid has been in the league 6 years. He's won one playoff series.
Yeah. And like, even like his points per game, like aren't that good, like in that span. So like, should they consider a move?
Yeah. Like, so, everyone loves to shit on Mitch Marner and shit on Austin Matthews and all these guys on the Leafs. And then Connor McDavid, who is the consensus number one player in the world, has one playoff series victory in 6 years. And I get it. The Oilers roster hasn't been as good as the Leafs roster for the most part, from the beginning of the Matthews and McDavid era, let's call it. But how come we're all letting Connor McDavid off the hook when this guy has one playoff series victory in 6 years and has Leon Draisaitl as his wingman? I mean, obviously he's a centerman, but you get what I'm saying. And then Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews are in the doghouse every year because they've lost a couple very tough 7-game series to the Boston Bruins. I mean, the Columbus series, that was a mess. And I think they should have won that series. But again, it goes to 5 games. And then last year, Lepore, they lose their $11 million captain 2 minutes into the series, which completely changed the complexion of that entire series. So again,
we're getting into a dark hole, Bruno. We're getting into a dark hole.
Exactly. I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, and I am to a certain degree, but it goes back to that point that you made, Lepore, that there's just such a fine line when it comes to these things. It's like if one other thing goes the way of the Leafs, the entire narrative changes, right? If the Leafs find a way to get through that first round series and then maybe get to the semifinals, Kyle Dubas is smiling and Leafs Nation is happy and his job is safe for the next few seasons. But now if the Leafs, for example, get into the playoffs, let's say as the 2 seed in the Atlantic Division, play, let's say, Florida in the first round, losing 7 games, it's like, then Leafs Nation is going to be pissed off again, and rightfully so. But is firing Kyle Dubas the right decision in that instance? I'm not quite sure it is.
You mentioned like the what ifs, and like, again, like I said, we're getting into a dark hole. When the Leafs made that big comeback in Game 5 against Montreal, and that was like the first shift over overtime, that Galchenyuk gave the puck away. I forget who showed it, but if you freeze frame it when he's at the high on the blue line about to make that pass, I think it was Nylander and there was another player just by themselves in front of the net wide open. So it's like if he doesn't fire that puck across the blue line and just like throws it on net, it's a 2-on-0 down low for the Leafs. And it's that thing of like, that's what it takes. Like, those are things you can look back on, like the Dermott giveaway. Like, it's just like, that's it. Like that's the line, right? But I heard McKinnon, I'm getting kind of off topic here, but he was on 31 Thoughts, and he's good friends with Marner. And they asked him, like, did you talk? I mean, did you have discussions with him about what happened? And McKinnon was just saying, it was tough what Marner was dealing with. Of course, it was the pressure of like playing in Toronto. But McKinnon, who's obviously a big Crosby fan, pointed out one of the years that Pittsburgh went all the way, they beat Washington. And they beat Washington in 7. And in that 7-game series, Crosby had 0 goals, 2 assists. So here you have like the best player in the league, one of the best players that we've ever seen in a 7-game series against a big rival. And he put up 0 goals and 2 helpers. And does he get shit on? No, because they won. And then you go to the next series, and again, it's math. Again, guys, advanced stats, metrics. Sidney Crosby's going to get scoring chances and score. He's going to light it up the next year. Like, things are going to even and play out. And that's the point he made about Marner, saying he's like, I bet if you give Marner 5 to 7 more games, he would score 4 or 5 goals, like because he had been quiet in the previous series. And when you lose, you don't want to hear that. Like you really don't. Because you want to slap someone in the face and say, show me. But once in a while, you try to use like a logical perspective, and that's it. And like, again, like the reason why I'm having this conversation is Kyle Dubas. Like, okay, you can criticize Marner. Like Bruno and I, like I said before, we blame the players, but you can't criticize Kyle Dubas for having a first team all-star in his lineup and in a main role. Like, what GM wouldn't do that or want that? So again, it's not about Dubas. It's about the players as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. The players have to show up. The players have to finally come through for Kyle Dubas. And I'm with Lepore. I would be rattled if Kyle Dubas was fired, because I look at some of the previous regimes that have been in place, even going back to like John Ferguson Jr. and some of the bullshit we saw while he was in charge. You just go back into history and you look at the Burke years and some of the crazy decisions he made, some of his awful first round picks, and then trading away the 2 first round picks for Phil Kessel.
Yeah, like things that are fatal. Like Berkey did things that, and like, I love Brian Burke, and I was sad that he got let go because I think he got enough time as he needed. But Berkey did things that were like fatal to the organization. Like certain trades and certain signings were bad. That like you can't get over this. Like you're screwed now. Yeah, and that's why I have the confidence in Kyle Dubas. Like he's not going to do anything like that.
Yeah, and is Kyle Dubas signing Mitch Marner for an extra $1.75 million a fatal blow to the organization? Exactly. Like, is that the worst decision that Kyle Dubas has made? Slightly overpaying Mitch Marner? Like, come on here. So, yeah, I just think things that have swung a little bit too far in the direction of, if Kyle Dubas doesn't come through this year, he's fired and he's the worst GM. And, I think people have taken it a little bit too far and, are failing to put some things into perspective. But again, the players, it's like me and Lepore said, it's on them.
You got to win.
they got to win.
You got to win.
And, if the same thing happens this year, what's the definition of insanity? When you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. So we could be going down that path, but I still do have some confidence that this core is going to figure it out and at least win a playoff series.
Yeah.
In the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I remember Steve Simmons, like he's good at his job. Like Shanny was doing his press conference. And I think the point that Simmons made face to face with Shanny was that no team has ever succeeded after losing 5 straight first rounds. And like Shanny said, he's like, well, there's been a lot of things in history that we said would never be done. They would be done, and they would be done. But to that I say, and people can make of this what they want, what's hurt the Leafs' reputation is being too good too early. Like in these kids' second season, they played the second and third seasons, they played the Bruins. And we look around the league at other rebuilding teams, like they're not even close. Like the people are hoping like, oh, this team during a rebuild is going to be fighting for a playoff spot. The Leafs were in fairly easily those years and lost to the Bruins in 7. So people like look at some of these losses and they think, oh my God, these kids. It's like, yeah, but in most situations on most teams, these kids aren't even getting a sniff of the playoffs. Like we'd almost be better off. Like,
and Lepore, they didn't even have home ice in those series.
Exactly. Like we'd almost be better off reputation wise had they just missed the playoffs those years and then like made it in their 3rd or 4th year or something. Like, but yeah, like I've always pointed to that like the reputation goes too deep because these kids made it right away.
You know
Like,
what? It's hilarious.
They were
Lepore, 'cause
kids, man.
It's almost as if like if the Leafs had not made the playoffs, like you said, it's almost like they'd be getting a pass at this point.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like let's say the first 2 or 3 years of the Matthews and Marner era, they had missed the playoffs. Because as we know, for year one, that team made the playoffs with all those guys in their rookie seasons, lost to the Washington Capitals in 6 games.
Yeah.
In an insanely close series. And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe there was at least 3 overtime games in that 6-game series. It was 2 or 3 overtime games. So if you had kind of gone with more of the natural progression, like, oh, the new kids are coming in, we're going to miss the playoffs the first couple of seasons, take this rebuild slow, the Leafs would almost be getting more of a pass at this point.
100%.
But it's almost like they're being criticized even more because they were so good so early.
The point I always make is people talk about like, oh, okay, built for the playoffs. This Leafs team has no heart and no character. These kids, and I respond to that by saying, okay, so the Bruins. We look at like those Bruins teams, and I ask, like, are the Bruins built for the playoffs? Do the Bruins have heart and character? And people say, oh yeah, for sure they do. The Bruins, of course they do. And I respond to that and say, why did it take them 7 games to beat a bunch of kids twice? And again, like, credit to them for winning. But if this team is all built for the playoffs and the Leafs are not, should have been a sweep. Shouldn't have been. Maybe 5 games, 7. And in one of those series, the Leafs were up 3-2. So again, that's me complimenting the Bruins because they can get it done. They were the team with the experience to get it done. But I just find it hilarious. Again, we're talking about margins. So like the margin of a team like that has heart and character and built for the playoffs and built the right way to another team that's like a bunch of failures is 2 game 7s on the road. Come on, guys. Like, I know people don't want to hear this right now, and people just want to see W's and playoff success, but
yeah, perspective. It's all about perspective. And you know what? All it's going to take is winning 1 playoff series, and that will drastically change this narrative. If the Leafs can just win 1 play, that's literally all we're all asking for at this point, is win a damn playoff series. And I think things are going to start to soften up a little bit.
Exactly.
In terms of the way that people view this team, view these players, view management. That's all it's going to take. Prove that you can win a playoff series, and then people are going to ease up on this entire situation a little bit.